With Marcus Alonso scoring a brace from wing-back and Harry Kane getting a hat-trick against West Brom, it's safe to say that Game Week 21 was a pretty good week for most fantasy Premier League managers. In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the news and potential players that could make Game Week 22 a similar success. Hello, my name's Andy and welcome to another looking ahead video, this time for Game Week 22. I've changed the format slightly in this video. I'm still going to look at the transfer, injury and African Cup of Nations news that we have so far for this week. But I'm also adding in details of my own team from Game Week 21, so the results that I had, as well as a look forward to Game Week 22, so my transfers and captain options, things like that. And I've also added in a game changer pick at the end, which is someone that doesn't have very high ownership, but I think will do really well this week. But for now, we're just going to jump straight into it. We'll start off with an Arsenal injury update, and it looks like Theo Walcott's still going to be out, according to Arsene Wenger. Considering he was only supposed to be out for 1 to 2 games, and this was over Christmas, so 1 to 2 games was like a week, it's starting to become a bit of a worry that we haven't had any more news and he's been out for so long, and right now we don't know when he's going to be back. He has dropped to 7.4 million though, so if he does come back firing, he could be an absolute bargain. Also in Arsenal news, the club tweeted today, as you'll see on the screen, that Bellerin, Coquelin and Gibbs are all back in training. Now, it seems unlikely that someone like Gibbs is going to take Monreal's place in the team, but there could be possible rotation there in the future. Though I suppose the biggest news is Bellerin. So any owners that got him, it looks like he's going to jump straight back into the team and could be a really good pick with the fixtures they've got coming up. And lastly, something that I'm really happy about, Olivier Giroud is back in training and has been since Wednesday. Now you'll see on the screen that I took a post from Fantasy Football Scout from their resident injury expert, Facer. I'll post a link in the description if you want to read the whole thing, just in case you can't see it properly on the screen. But essentially he said before Wenger came out and spoke that he was pretty confident that he'd be fit enough to start this weekend. And if he was training by Thursday, that he'd be almost likely to start. So given that he's been training since Wednesday, confirmed by Wenger, it looks pretty good for owners. Now, non-owners might be a bit wary about bringing him in, especially when there's players like Lukaku doing well. But for anyone that owns him, like me, I definitely think we should be keeping him this week. The African Cup of Nations is starting to become a little bit of a pain for West Brom and Liverpool. I mentioned last week that Neom and Matip looked like they'd be okay to start for their teams after they weren't named in the Cameroon squad. But it now looks like both clubs are waiting for FIFA to tell them if they're eligible to play. Essentially, the Cameroon FA have not provided either club with written permission that they can feature for their teams. And if they do play them without this permission, then apparently there's potential legal trouble, which is why Matip wasn't included in the Liverpool squad for the FA Cup game against Plymouth. It is expected from reports that FIFA will give an update on Friday, so we may know more then, but for now it looks like neither player can actually play for their club. Now, as I mentioned, this has a knock-on effect for players like Chris Brunt, because Neom is the left-back for West Brom, which let Chris Brunt play in the front three, or the midfield three behind Rondon. So right now, if you're a Chris Brunt owner or you're looking to bring him in, it looks though if he's going to play, it'll be at left-back. Now, he can still provide attacking returns, and perhaps West Brom will start getting clean sheets because their fixture run is really good. But it is a little bit of a concern. I own him myself, so obviously I'm still going to play him. But if you're looking to bring him in, it's worth keeping an eye on the Neom news and the African Cup of Nations news to see what happens next. Now, considering the big game weeks last year, we're in Game Week 34 and Game Week 37, you're probably thinking it's a little bit too early to start worrying about these. But you've got to remember that these double game weeks only come around because of the blank game weeks either before or after. Now, you may have heard me mention Ben Crellin on my streams that I've done before. And he's definitely, if you use Twitter, he's definitely someone you want to follow. I'll provide a link in the description below. Now, he's really into looking at double game weeks, potential blanks, percentage of chances of each of these things happening. And I've taken one of his tweets, which you can see on the screen, which will show you which teams are still in with a chance of blanking and which ones aren't. Now, we're still weeks away from this. It's game week 28 that these blanks will likely occur. But you've got to remember, we've only got 7 free transfers between now and then. And looking at the teams that could potentially still blank, there's loads of big players that might miss out, such as Ibra, Hazard, Costa, Alonso, Coutinho, Sanchez, Aguero. The list kind of goes on. Now, what's interesting is the bit at the bottom, which shows you which teams definitely aren't going to blank because they're out of the FA Cup. Now, what's interesting is players like Lukaku, Baines, who are really popular right now, the 2 players that I'm looking at, Chris Brunt, who I've already mentioned, and Charlie Daniels, who's doing really well for Bournemouth. They're definitely not going to blank that week. So if you've already got them, then they're probably worth keeping. If you're looking to bring him in, then most of them have got good fixtures right now, and if they're also not going to blank, they really could be good assets to your team. Now, obviously, it's worth noting as well that you can bench 3 outfield players during any game week. So if they do blank, you can bench them and then play them the next week. But given the lack of transfers that we have and the amount of big players that might miss out, it's definitely worth keeping an eye on, and I'd definitely check out Ben's Twitter. I know this isn't exactly news, and I do hope that I pronounced the name right, but finally Manchester City have announced and confirmed that Gabriel Jesus is eligible to play against Spurs and is now signed for the club. Now, he's 9 million in Fantasy Premier League, so it's unlikely you're going to bring him straight into the team. He's probably more of a wait-and-see prospect. But if you read reports about him, one of the reasons that he was purchased is his ability, while he's up the pitch, to win the ball back and press the opposition. Now, we already know from Pep Guardiola's kind of philosophy and seeing him play and try and get Man City playing this way, that that's how he likes to play. So I wouldn't expect him to come straight into the team, but you just never know with Pep. He's already been training for 3 weeks, so it's possible. At 9 million with other midfield options, like I said already, it is a bit of a risk, but it's definitely one keeping an eye on. And if Aguero gets an injury, I'll be super interested. That does lead me on nicely to the next part of the video, which is taking a look at some of the top FPL strikers right now. Now, the Diego Costa news did come quite late last week. It was a bit of a shock and put owners in a spot of trouble, really, deciding on what to do. Now, if you already got rid, that's fair enough. I can see exactly why you did that. Even with Hull at home, you don't want a striker that's that expensive that's not going to play. And obviously, even more kudos to you if you bought in Harry Kane for his hat-trick. Now, if you haven't already got rid, I consider keeping for now. He's got Hull at home next, and he's already dropped 0.3 million, so he's not going to drop any more. The fixtures do start to turn after that, though, so you could make a justification for getting rid. Now, Conte says it's a back injury. The papers are saying it's been a bust-up. Either way, I feel like there's no smoke without fire in this case, and I would be a bit worried. If Conte says he's going to play against Hull, or that he's back in the squad, or that there's nothing wrong with him, any good news basically, I would keep, but you can look towards getting rid of him next week. And also on the kind of list for bad strikers is Sergio Aguero. Now, if you watch the Scoutcast podcast that I recorded with Fantasy Football Scout during the week, you'll already have seen that I don't think he's a very good pick right now. I won't go into all the stats again. If you want to watch that, I'll leave a link into the description at the point where I start chatting about him. But overall, he's not getting into the box. He's not having shots in the box. And overall, his play is quite deep. And I just think for 12.8 million, you need more than that. He's only had 1 assist all season. And in the last 3 game weeks, has created no chances. And I just think for that kind of money, there's other strikers that you could get who are going to perform better for your team. Now, on to the good strikers that we're going to look at. I haven't gone for the obvious pick, which is probably Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But instead, we're going to look at Kane and Lukaku. Now, interestingly, after his hat-trick, Kane has now become the highest points per match forward in the game, with 6.6 points per match. Now, this is very closely followed behind by Costa and Ibra, who both have 6.5, and then Lukaku is on 5.8. Now, after his hat-trick against West Brom, he's obviously going to see more FPL managers buying him, even though he's got Man City away. But given that they just conceded 4 to Everton, and generally this season have looked pretty poor at the back, he still could be a good buy if you're looking for a new striker, especially if Costa's ruled out. We'll have to wait and see on that. After Man City away, they've got Sunderland, Middlesbrough and Stoke in the next 4. And obviously, as well as the chances he's getting from players like Eriksen and Ali, he's also got penalties to back him up. So alongside Ibra, I think that Kane looks like a really good pick now. And then you've got Lukaku, who's often seen as someone who's not consistent and that you can't trust because, he'll tend to score in the big games, not the easier games, etc., etc. But I've had a look, and he's only scored twice against the top 6 teams this year, and has now scored 16 times in 20 matches. Now, those 2 goals against the top 6 were both Man City, and as I mentioned, he's scoring 5.8 points per game. So even if he does go on a run of a few blanks, he's then likely to explode. So if you've got him for a period of games, it's likely that you're going to get a pretty good amount of points over those games. Maybe not in a single match, but over the run of games. And he does have really good fixtures coming up. So he's got Palace, Stoke, Bournemouth, Middlesbrough and Sunderland in the next 5. Now, if I didn't already own Olivier Giroud, it's definitely Lukaku that I'd be looking at. So if you are looking for a slightly cheaper than Kane option, Lukaku's probably your man. So this is just going to be a really quick one, but we spoke about Font last week and that he'd handed in a transfer request, so was likely to be left out the side. And that did happen, and Yoshida did play. Now, these rumours of him getting transferred away in this window in January aren't going away. And the latest he's been linked to is West Ham. Now, I think he probably wanted to go to a bigger club than that, but That seems to be where he's going. I don't know why. Maybe he wants the trip to London, or perhaps it's one last paycheck before he retires, potentially. But it does seem to be that that's where he's going to go. Now, Yoshida is still only priced at 4.2 million, and their next run of games includes Leicester at home, Swansea away, West Ham at home, and Sunderland away. So not the worst fixture list, and at 4.2 million, he really could be a good enabler. So if you need some money and you want to downgrade a defender, make sure you take a look at him while Font is still looking to get out of Southampton. Now, there's two bits of kind of defensive news that have come up today, which are probably most notable for FPL managers. The first is that Koeman has come out and said that Leighton Baines is suffering from a bit of a rib problem. Now, it doesn't look like he's going to keep him out. He's confident that he's going to play. But for me personally, I don't own Baines, and I was looking to get him in. This is probably going to be enough to put me off, and I'll probably wait till next week. One of the reasons for that is I owned him earlier in the season for about 5 or 6 games. He didn't play once. I got really unlucky that the first game there was no talk of an injury, and he suddenly got one. Then he was out for ages. So this does put me off. But if you're an owner, I'd almost definitely play, and I wouldn't be too worried. I certainly wouldn't be getting rid just yet. And the other bit of news is from Spurs. So you've probably already seen that Jan Vertonghen's now out. Spurs think that's going to be for at least 6 weeks. So he's going to miss a good few game weeks. So there's two kind of issues with this, I suppose. One, don't bring him in. I don't think anyone was anyway, but don't bring him in. But also, you could now have a cheaper entry into the Spurs defence, depending on how Pochettino decides to line up. So he might bring someone like Wimmer or Davis into the line and keep playing 3-5-2. I think that's probably most likely because they've done so well with that formation. Now, obviously, there's questions over whether they'll still be as solid at the back. But I think Alderweireld is really the key to that defence. So, yes, Vertonghen's going to miss. But I think they're still going to do well. And hopefully, Wimmer will come in. They'll play 3-5-2. And then the likes of Walcott and Rose will still be really good options. But both those bits of news, things to keep an eye on. So as we're looking ahead to Game Week 22, I kind of want to get a point in the videos where I look at my results from the previous week and then my thoughts going forward. So I've obviously picked a pretty good week to start from, like where I scored 94 with a 4-point hit in Game Week 21. You can see on the screen, hopefully, that Heaton is just the main man right now. Anytime they get a clean sheet, he seems to be getting bonus. Because the defenders just aren't picking up the bonus. So as soon as it's like a 1 or a 2-0, he's right up there. Obviously, Alonso was brilliant with his double goal haul. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that when it comes to FPL. And it'd be a nightmare if you didn't own him. And funnily enough, I thought he was owned by just about everyone, but after checking after the match, he's only owned by about 10% of all players now. So he's still a really good differential in a team that's really attacking. And then probably my favourite part of the whole game week was Peter Crouch with 11 points. I wasn't expecting that much. I know we've been doing well. I was kind of talked into it on the last stream to bring him in instead of Ashley Barnes. And all I can say is thanks to anyone that watched and commented on that and got me to get him in. And then the only other good note really was Sanchez scoring 11 points for me. Obviously, captain was 22. It was between him or Ibra. Either way, I would have got points, but it's always nice to get the option right. And then obviously we got Game Week 22 to look ahead to. So this is how I'm currently looking for Game Week 22. Obviously, Heaton's not ideal in goal, but at the moment I don't want to spend a transfer to get rid of Pickford. I may do that in the next couple of weeks if I get a spare one, but goalkeeper transfers are probably the least of my worries right now. Defence looks pretty good. Alonso and Brunt both with decent home games. Jones against Stoke away is not ideal, but I think I'm going to play him ahead of Crouch and leave Crouch on the bench because I'm just hoping that we, Man United, can do well against them. Captain-wise, it's quite tough this week, actually. Sanchez is probably the standout for most people because Burnley's away fixtures, or away form, sorry, isn't great. But they still don't tend to concede that many. Hazard is probably almost the best option, I think. But Ibra has been so consistent over the last kind of 10 game weeks that right now I've got him. That may change before the Saturday deadline, but that's where I'm at right now. You'll see that Giroud's actually flagged in this picture, but he's now basically been confirmed fit, as I said earlier in the video. So I'm really happy to play him. And then you can see my transfers out. I'm considering, I'll probably do Sigurdsson out and Stanislas in. I think that's almost a dead cert at this point. I was looking at Holobas out and Baines in, but with the Baines news, I'm a bit worried about doing that for a hit. But long term, I want him in. So Sigurdsson and Stanislas will be done. That'll free up a lot of money. And then next week, I'll reassess and go from there. So as the last part to these videos, I want to go for a game changer pick. So this is someone that could do really well for you, who's not owned by very many managers and could see you boost up the rankings if he does perform. Now I've gone for Pedro at Chelsea. Currently costs 7 million, so he's gone down a bit since earlier in the season. and is only owned by 5% of all managers. Now, what's really good about him is in his home games this season, he's played 10 times. He's got 6 assists and 4 goals, which is a really good return. And the next up is Hull at home. Now, they could be more defensive under the new manager, but I still think this is an excellent fixture for Chelsea, and when Pedro plays, he's going to do well. Now, after this is the only problem. Liverpool away and Arsenal at home means you might not want to keep him longer term. If you really need a different pick this week, he could be one to go for. And after that Liverpool and Arsenal game, does have some really good fixtures, so for that money, it could be excellent value. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hopefully that news was useful to you. Let me know if anything you've seen in this video changes your plans for next week and what you're going to do instead. I'd also be really interested to know your thoughts on the video. I tried to do it a bit differently this time, and I got some feedback that the last video was a bit robotic, so I've tried to make this one a bit more natural. Hopefully it didn't come across too bad, and hopefully it didn't feel like it dragged on. But let me know below if there's any changes you want to see. If you did enjoy the video, always appreciate you hitting the like button and subscribe for more. That'll also let you know when I go live for the live streams I'm doing. The next one will probably be, well, it'll definitely be Friday. Haven't confirmed the time yet. Most likely 9:30 in the evening UK time. If you follow me on Twitter, my handle's Andy85WSM. I'll definitely announce there when it's going to be. But until then, keep chatting FPL, and I'll catch you soon.